Welcome to Time About the Movies Flashback. Today we're finally wrapping up October of 1988. It seems like we've been doing this now for a long time now, but that's what happens when you do one of these a week instead of doing one every single day like on the regular show. But we are looking at October 7th, 1988. We've got 4 movies to look at. We have a lot to get to here, so let's just not waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and jump on that new one, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Alien Nation.
In 1991, they came to Earth. They have their own customs, their own mysteries.
Slick, I hate this place.
And their own crimes.
My fellow newcomers will work very hard to make as much money as they can to give to me.
Are you all right? Sykes, here's your new partner.
We have met.
You're right.
My true name is Stangya Sorens.
Sorensen, well, good night.
Now, beyond their darkest fears.
You move one thing in your history, hear me? Not history. Eternity.
He's dead. No, he's not.
Lies an evil beyond imagination. Alien Nation.
So as you can tell, the story takes place in the not-too-distant future of 1991, because clearly that's what happened 3 years after this movie came out, but I digress. But you have the assimilation of the newcomers, an alien race settling into Los Angeles. Much to the initial dismay of the local population, the plot integrates the neo-noir and buddy cop film genres with a science fiction theme centering on the relationship between a veteran police investigator, played by James Caan, and an extraterrestrial, played by Mandy Patinkin, who was the first newcomer detective. The duo probe a criminal underworld while attempting to solve a homicide. And this was actually a very well-known franchise for a little bit of time. Like, after this movie came out and became a hit, it's gone on to have a cult following. The movie actually spawned a TV series that aired on Fox in, I believe it was 1990, and actually had 5 TV films, a set of comic books, a number of novels, all in an attempt to continue the story. The writer of this is Rockne S. O'Bannon. That's a name you probably aren't too familiar with at first, but you've definitely seen his work before. He's worked on stuff like The Twilight Zone, the 80s Twilight Zone, Amazing Stories. He also did Sequest DSV. He's most notably known as the creator of Farscape, and this is directed by Graham Baker. Now, Graham Baker is a director that has done stuff like Omen 3, The Final Conflict, which is not that good of a movie. It's a fun, cheesy movie. Impulse, Born to Ride, Night Beowulf, not the Robert Zemeckis Beowulf, but another Beowulf. But he's mostly known for his. But after this, he's mostly done stuff like the Joey Zuzu commercials from Zuzu Mullers from back in the 1980s. If you ever saw those, but this is a really good movie. This is a really fun, clever idea, taking a science fiction film, mixing it with a buddy cop movie. It's actually something that's very unique and very different, considering all the knockoffs we were getting of stuff like 48 Hours, and then around this time, Lethal Weapon was another one we were getting knockoffs of. It's a very unique film, and James Caan works very well with Mandy Patinkin. You also have Terrence Stamp in the film, also, what else did I want to say here? But it's a really inventive film. It's a really clever idea. The effects work is really well done on the aliens. Like, they do a fantastic job of making these things look very unique and unlike anything we'd seen up to this point. It's a very well-made film, a very good concept overall. It doesn't work all the way through, but when it works, it really does work very well. It does a fantastic job of mixing two things that we've seen done so many times and putting it into its own unique little thing right here. I'm glad to see that it has gone on to have the cult following that's had over the years, and it's a film that really, honestly, could be seen as sort of ahead of its time, too, because a lot of the subject matters they talk about in here are stuff that's still brought up over 35 years later. Murder, discrimination, science fiction. I mean, that's all stuff that we deal with nowadays, and they gotta give a lot of credit to the movie for doing that. It's a really smart, clever film. It's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. Alien Nation actually is really, really damn good. I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, Alien Nation is a really good film. You should definitely check it out. But with that said, let's move on to the next movie, and that is Sally Field and Tom Hanks in Punchline.
Was this on the prep sheet? A funny thing happened to Lila Kritzik. on the way to cooking dinner for her husband.
I gotta learn.
Lady gets eggs every night. 6 clubs a night, all night. Wonder Woman flew an invisible jet. How did she find it? She stumbled around the runway until she got home. Oh, here it is. Come on.
I just can't do it. It's just something.
Come on.
Sally Field,
All right,
It's funny. He thinks I'm funny.
Tom Hanks,
Thomas around funny.
Punchline. Dying is easy. Comedy is hard.
So as you can tell from that, the punchline of the movie is that it tells the story of a talented young comic played by Tom Hanks, who helps a housewife played by Sally Field, who wants to break into the world of stand-up comedy. John Goodman and Mark Rydell are also in the film. Of course, this film is notable because it's Tom Hanks' first film since the release of Big, which pushed him into superstardom, which came out the previous summer. Of course, Sally Field has won 2 Academy Awards by this point, so no need to introduce her. This movie, when it came out, was not a big hit. I remember seeing this movie for the first time when Funny People came out back in 2009, that Adam Sandler, Seth Rogen movie directed by Judd Apatow. A movie I really liked, and I found this movie that looked very similar to it, and is very similar to it, so I checked it out. It's actually a pretty decent little comedy. It's a fun movie that's well acted with Sally Field and Tom Hanks. Some great comedy all around here, great performances overall. Not a perfect film per se, but it definitely has a lot of elements to it that I think a lot of people overlooked when it came out, and I think people are slowly but surely starting to realize is actually in this film. It's a very well-made film. It's a film that knows exactly what it's trying to be, and it's a fun little concept. I mean, going inside the life of a stand-up comedian. How does he get their materials? How do they break out in this way? And you got, like I said, 2 really good performances from Sally Field and Tom Hanks to really make it work. And yeah, like I said, I think Funny People did it a lot better in terms of telling the story, but this is one that I think a lot of people overlooked when it came out, and I mean, I like to believe that it is slowly but surely gaining a following. It recently just got a Blu-ray release, so that should tell you something right there. But, yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to come around to this film. I think it is a well-made film, a little underrated gem from Tom Hanks. I think it's definitely one you should definitely check out, Punchline. So with that said, on to the next movie, and that is the documentary Imagine John Lennon.
This movie is dedicated to John Lennon, who would have celebrated his 48th birthday this month. Imagine John Lennon, the angry youth, the musician, the radical, the idealist. Through his own words and private collection of film and music, imagine John Lennon, a motion picture portrait, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
So as that trailer pretty much tells you, this is a documentary about John Lennon on what would have been his 2 days before his 48th birthday and nearly 8 years after his death in 1980. And it chronicles his life and musical career as a member of the Beatles and also as a solo artist. Features recordings that have never been released prior to this film. Remember, this is back before we had the internet, so we didn't really have a lot of that stuff back then to really see this lost footage. So this was kind of a big deal. You got stuff like an acoustic demo of Real Love taped in 1979, which was an alternate recording of that would later be used for the Beatles Anthology 2 soundtrack in 96. A rehearsal take of Imagine from 1971 before the final take was made. And it was actually commissioned by Yoko Ono in 86. However, none of the other Beatles agreed to participate in the film, though they did apparently approved of it. And it's a pretty interesting little documentary. Like I said, keep in mind, this is back in 1988 when nobody really had the power of using computers like we have nowadays. Like, you couldn't do the stuff we could do now 35 years ago. So this was very unique and something to have because you didn't have anywhere else to really go for it unless you knew John Lennon or Yoko Ono overall. But it's a very interesting documentary. It's a really well-made film directed by Andrew Solt, who's done a ton of different documentaries for TV and movies, and it never feels tasteless. It never feels like it's just there to cash in on what John Lennon's name and all that. It feels very genuine, and it feels very earnest. It really does show you what kind of career this guy had overall through this lost footage, and I think it does a phenomenal job of doing that. It's a very good film, a very solid, entertaining film, really well worth the watch. Definitely check it out if you can find it, which you should be able to, but with that said, let us go ahead and move on to the last movie we have here, and that is Billy Crystal in Memories of Me.
Two of America's
So the film basically follows a guy who's at his girlfriend's instance. His girlfriend, played by Joe Beth Williams, a disgruntled man played by Billy Crystal, tries to make peace with his high-spirited, street-smart, and often irritatingly careless father, played by Alan King, a failed actor who never quit his dreams to be a success. And they tout Alan King here like he was really that much of a big deal around this time, which he probably was. But then again, I wasn't born in 1988. I wasn't born around this time, so I don't know if putting him as the second person behind Billy Crystal really helped the film in the end. But notably, this is directed by Henry Winkler. This is actually the first film he directed that went to theaters. His third film in total. The first film he directed was a Dolly Parton TV movie, A Smoky Mountain Christmas, which came out a couple years prior to this. But when you look at the film, honestly, it just feels like them trying to copy another Tom Hanks movie from a couple years ago, Nothing in Common, with Jackie Gleason, which I think has done a whole lot better overall. But this film is okay for what it is. I think mostly because it is Billy Crystal right at the peak of his star power. I mean, this is a guy who was just coming off of Saturday Night Live, was trying to make a name for himself as a leading actor. Been a couple other movies, Running Scared and Throw Mama from the Train, and this was kind of his third film from that. And like I said, it's a passable movie, but you can't really look at this without thinking of the far superior Nothing in Common. I think that's a much better movie than this. Not a bad film overall, and certainly the best thing Henry Winkler directed, because his next film would be Cop and a Half, which, I'd say more about that one. But, passable film, nothing too spectacular about it, but it delivers what it promises, so that's Memories of Me. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies Flashback. When we meet next time, we'll have 3 movies to look at, including Heartbreak Hotel, directed by Chris Columbus. We also have Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and we also have Clint Eastwood's Birds. So we'll take a look at those 3 films next time. And until then, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see some other episodes we've done, check out the playlists below, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys for the next video. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. So take care.